I think what we're going to do today is we're going to chat about everything that you do, and I'd love to go deep as much as we can as you would allow. And I also love to people get an experience, even if it's a 5% experience or a 10% experience of what it is that you do. Now, I've had the privilege of experiencing exactly what you do, and it definitely impacted me in many, many ways. And I thought, if it's something that impacted me that much, it's definitely something worth documenting and sharing. So I think to start it off, if you could describe exactly what it is that you're doing in terms of getting people to their better selves.
Okay. I mean, I'll describe it generically in the way I would to most people, and that is that what I work with people on is what lies in their subconscious rather than the conscious experience. So the first thing is the awareness that there's two very clear aspects to our brain: the conscious one, which is what most people kind of think they are, and then the subconscious, which actually runs 90% of our lives. And there's some obvious parts, like it makes our, the heart rhythm, and it stimulates body temperature, and it adjusts, things to change that, does those things. But there's also a great deal of belief structure in the subconscious. And the original statistics I was taught were like 95% of everything that we do is stimulated by a subconscious response versus, later research says it's even higher. Whereas the amount of time our conscious actually gets involved is quite small. So a practical example being when you drive a motor car, when you first drove a car, it's usually very messy. You're trying to focus on when do I press the pedal, when do I grab the gear stick, when do I, drat, I've bumped into something. And now later, once you've done it for a while, you can, we look at most women, brush their hair, put on their makeup, answer the phone, and do all of those things whilst they're driving. So you're with me, it's a process that runs in the background. So it's almost the bulk of the response that we have to what shows up outside us is a habituated response, and it is working with that habituated response. And what makes it so interesting is where it comes from. So and this is part of the theta modality. So the theta modality teaches you like 4 areas of where structural beliefs come from that stimulate, how you show up. And some of them are obvious. So one of them is genetic. So I think we tend to discount genetics. We accept genetics in how we physically look. We think, we look like mommy and daddy, but the fact that we behave like mommy and daddy and grandpa and grandma and great-grandpa and great-grandma and that kind of stuff we don't take into enough account. So you can even, the way we respond to things, our interpretation of things, it's, as an example, religions. So religious dogma, whichever the faith, has been drummed into people for hundreds of years. And even so, young people now, even if they've rejected the religion, I would promise them that in their subconscious, all of those rules that were drummed into their ancestors about you won't do this and you won't do that, and if you do this, you'll go somewhere awful, they're still lying inside their subconscious. So you don't escape your heritage that easily. So there's genetic. Core level is, I've learnt it. Well, I'll use some terms. So I'm going to say since the spirit joined the body. So I'm assuming there's a spirit. If you look at Freud's interpretation was nothing occurred until you left the womb. Jung's interpretation was no, it actually starts earlier and experientially. So what I do in the work is you've experienced it. I test it. And when you test it, you learn what's in the womb. You're tapped into your mommy's emotional system. So you're in chemically, okay, but you're also in deeper than that. But those are the bits that some people don't accept. So you experience all of your mother's emotions. So everything she goes through, in essence, you go through, and that teaches you. And you also at that time, your interpretation skills aren't necessarily brilliant. So you can interpret things in very peculiar ways. You know, the one that comes to mind, like the world is against me. So mom has a bad day and you end up with the world is against me. Now the world is against me is not very helpful because everywhere you go, you're going to see that as the world is against me.
Yeah.
So there's core. You did genetic. The next one is called, the name it's given is history. And this goes against current Christian dogma. It's consistent with many of the global religions, and that is about previous lifetimes. So actually existence is out of this current one. So it's exploring that. It explores the existences and it explores karmic carriage. So
Perfect.
if you philosophically, it's understood that karma travels through lifetimes. Your karma, isn't just what you've managed to collect this time round.
Yeah.
And it's deeper. It's deeper than that. It's what you've done before.
What for people who don't really understand that, because I think there's such a heavy negative connotation towards karma, particularly within the Christian belief system. If you were to describe what karma truly is for the layperson out there, what would you say? What is
So
karma?
I love the philosophical description. So I went to a philosophy school called New Acropolis, and there's one in Joburg. It's a really cool school. They teach you comparative studies. So they teach you about the different philosophers and what they thought, and they compare them so you get a sense of the thing, not just, you don't have to just regurgitate learning. And they look at, I think this is Buddhic. The Buddhic definition was what karma's doing is it's just keeping you in the direction of your dharma. So your dharma is the eventual outcome, the purpose of what you're doing. And the karma is the system that just says, no, dude, you're deviating from the direction. Pat, let's get you back in the right direction. That's all that it is. It's the system that does that. So if you look at it it's a very useful, gentle way to keep going in the right direction. Cool. There's a perspective that says if you go and kill someone, well, guess what? This is an experience you should, if you have so little awareness that you would do a thing like that, best you experience what it's like. There is a perspective like that, but principally that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about keeping us going in the right path.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, immediately as you say that, what comes to my mind is, because what a lot of people would assume, it's if you do bad, then you're going to reap the benefit of it, or the consequence of it rather. Is there then this give and take, and is there this repercussion as to whatever action that you take? Would you describe it as that, or does it go even deeper than that?
I would suggest that part of our experience, I use the term that the truth of who you are is having an experience with a body. You're not the body. So the Christian principle of the everlasting being is the spirit, not the physical. Well, we all know that bodies have a lifespan. Okay, make it last 90 years, you're a genius. That's really well done. But the spirit is everlasting, if that makes some sense. So our spirit arrives with some structure about the way our life is going to show up. Okay, makes a little bit of sense. And I'm going to suggest that there is some involvement of you, the true of you, about that before you rock up and join the body. Because once we're in the body, we enter duality. So the vast majority of us have no sense of the other side. This is what everything is, which is why we get so attached to the body. And in that divine timing, some experiences can be configured. And you can configure that with, I'm going to have parents that don't love themselves. So I'm going to learn the habit of not loving myself. Then I'm going to go through life with the habit of not loving myself. And that's my divine timing, is to experience that.
Yeah.
Okay, so there we go. So,
with you.
And then when you go through, so you'll note, for you now, there's a bit of emotion coming up. And many people will experience an internal emotion when we start going towards the lack of self-love, because it's a very dominant human thing. It's very common. How do I notice this? I look in the mirror in the morning and I'm rude. Okay? I don't look at myself and go, wow. I look at myself and I go, ish. Okay, so that's self-love. So it's like, when I look at it, when I started the work's taught around beliefs and the lessons come in the divine timing. And then later on discovered that actually all this is a structure to teach you something. So the example we just used was this structure that's embedded in us, maybe parents that teach us don't love yourself, very critical, they're always judging everything, is actually what you're here to do is to learn self-love. And then I use the term of virtue, so you learn the virtue of self-love. So in the work, I moved from let's bring in the belief of I love myself kind of thing to no, let's have the virtue of self-love. And when you've got the virtue of self-love, the whole pattern disappears. So a belief, if I have a belief that says I don't love, well, in the subconscious we need to put the negative at the end, so I love myself not. If I have that it helps interpret. So there's a system called the RAS on the brainstem. And it's described, okay, I've never done the science of it, but it's described that it filters what your senses bring in and dramatically reduces what reaches your brain. Now, I'm going to suggest that the belief structures really have a great assistance in that filtering. So here's what comes at me. The RAS then says, well, you don't love yourself, so only pick the bits where I don't love myself is reinforced. So, it doesn't really matter what mum said. She was just being nasty and telling me I'm a useless piece of whatever. Sure. Okay, so the systems are like beautiful, self-reinforcing. Let's have this experience and have it really well. Does that answer?
Absolutely. So, just to sort of speak onto that. So let's say someone has this feeling of not being loving towards themselves or not having the experience of self-love or the virtue of self-love right now. Is it their doing, or as we've just discussed, could it have come from previous generations? And because I feel like we take it on like I need to fix myself. Is it a fixing of oneself, or is it a revealing of oneself?
So a lot of the experience comes with the body you enter. So I'm a spirit now before I'm coming back down into a body. So I'm assuming that system works. And I have chosen that I need to have a greater and deeper awareness of self-love. And we will know, even when we teach children, that you learn best through experience, not through being told. And often, or in almost all cases, we need to experience almost what we call, everything's a continuum, but what is the opposite of it, so that we can actually understand what it truly is.
With you.
So we can figure, here I am as a spirit, I want to have that experience so I can learn this better. Oh, there's a spirit. Right, we're going to put you in that genetic lineage, in that family, because they've got it proper. They hate themselves. Okay, does that make sense? So when the spirit comes in, it goes and joins a body which has the historic, or genetic understanding, hate myself, I'm a piece of rubbish. So you kind of inherit, it's like, let's say we can look at the metaphor of a car for the body, okay? It's if I want to learn to go really, really, really fast, I don't join a taxi, I join a Formula One car. Is that, okay, so you literally get the experience from the body that you choose. It comes with the package.
Sure. Wow. Okay. So my mom has always said to me, and she says you choose the family that you want to be born into.
There you go. Consistent. Yeah.
So that seems very much consistent to what you're saying. Now, I want to know if you were, so let's say someone they have this feeling of they need to experience this virtue of self-love. Where does that desire to fulfill come from? Is that something that's given to us? Is that now the karmic experience, the dharma of?
Okay, I'm going to suggest that as a spirit, we seek growth. So there is, and then here's a Christian doctrine. There is this interpretation of duality that there is heaven and there is hell. So hell is as awful as it can get, and heaven is as good as it can get. And I'm going to suggest that there's actually a continuum. And where you go is resonant with you, your vibration as a human being, as a being actually, that decides where you go when you leave this body. So when we look at that, it's often described that what we are as spirits is on a journey back to God. And, I'm using the term God. There's lots of other words we could use, but it's this thing that we don't really understand. It's whether some people use big spirit, some people say source or the universe or whatever word we use, it doesn't matter. It's that journey back to that state. When we're in a human existence and we acquire this virtuous energy, our vibration rises. And when we go back, we leave the physical body and we go back to the other side, we go closer to God. So can you understand that this desire to go closer to God and to experience more light and more love and more peace and more bliss and more divine understanding and all those things, that could be quite motivating, rather than, the Christian example of upside down on your head in a fire with it's not typically pictured in the nicest of ways.
And so how would you then define God? If God can be defined, how would you define God?
So in essence, I'm going to say God is everything.
Okay.
So that what we are is almost like God's nervous system. We are God experiencing itself.
I love that.
Okay, so we come in and we have an experience. God it's got all of us, okay? So God continues to learn and grow. I think for me, God is beyond the comprehension of this piece of protein I have inside my head. But it is the source of all that we perceive.
Yeah.
So the creation of this particular universe that you and I currently live in, and the other ones, and the nature of life and everything.
Yeah.
I'm going to add there's a beautiful piece of work, again, that I got from the philosophy school, which is something called the Sevenfold Constitution. And it's supposedly, it's ancient, it's about 50,000 years old. And it describes the nature of man. And it's called sevenfold because it describes 7 parts. And there are 4 parts in the lower being, the bit that we're currently engaging in that does the reaction stuff and all that, the bit that is the dominant part of our human experience. Mm-hmm. And then there's another aspect which is 3 parts. And the 3 parts in the original Sanskrit were Atma, Buddhi, and Manas. Manas being the higher mind, Buddhi being intuition, and Atma being the God self. So I would suggest, made in the image of God, okay, isn't this? So I know we used to, when we were kids, shown a picture of a man with a grey beard, that's God. No. The Atma is the essence of God. So if God were, for a metaphor, the ocean, there's a tiny little drop of the ocean in us. So we're in the image of. We're not God. We don't have the totality of God, but there is an aspect of us which is...
I love that. That resonates with me so much. Would you then describe it as a holotropic experience of God? So having even the drop of the ocean, if you look at the drop of the ocean, it has the ocean.
Yes.
It is the ocean.
Yes. Have I? So yes, I would, but I wouldn't currently have the complete experience of that. Okay, so I do, one of the practices that I've been blessed to acquire is the practice of transcendental meditation. And transcendental meditation is, it's a very simple practice, and the essence of it is to what they call transcend. And when you transcend, you go into a state of bliss. You have no sense of your body, you have no sense, there's no thought, there's no emotion, there's just, it's very, very peaceful. And for me, when I don't want to come back. When I go there, this is the best holiday ever. And that is described as the experience of the Atma.
Sure.
So what you experience the nature of your Atma when there's literally this perfect bliss with no interference, because when we're typically in the body, there's thought, there's emotion, there's all of the noise, none of that whatsoever. So you can, I mean, if you want to, there's a route to go and have an experience which would be somewhat similar, but I couldn't in any way, I guess, replicate the boundless experience of what God is.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I can do that anyway,
Yeah.
pretty sure. But there's a taste.
Sure.
And it is a beautiful, beautiful taste.
Yes, absolutely. So, Mark, I do know or have a bit of history about you. I know that you didn't always do this.
No. No, I didn't. It's not the truth.
So I would love to know, what got you into this work? Firstly, what did you do previously, and what led you to this work itself?
So I started out as I was very clever when I was young, and I eventually I became an engineer. I was incredibly rational. I had in fact, people used to say this, I have the sense in my gut. And I would have said, that's just ridiculous. That's the most preposterous thing I've ever heard. But, I mean, one of my realities was I had cut off emotion. I mean, I've got English genetics and I, good Victorian background, and emotions weren't things we had. They're just irritating and pathetic and, all of the words that get associated with them. So my journey then was from there to an experience I had in Johannesburg at a particular workshop where the emotion came back into my body. And I'd read a book, and I still haven't found the book, but the book spoke about the previous incarnation of St. John. And when something, I don't know, sometimes you read something or you see something and it really goes, whoa. And that just said, oh, okay, this I now need to understand more deeply, or I need to know more of, or whatever. And that really started. So really it's a journey so I use the metaphor of the left brain. So typically they say the left brain's the logic and all that. And I moved dramatically into my right brain. So there's my journey through life. And then in that journey, so I not only discovered emotion, because I blocked it, okay? I discovered that I sit and I sense other people's emotions. So I have to discern when there's an emotion, well, is it mine? Is it the other, someone else's? I remember going, you're a biokineticist, I remember going to the bio and I'd be on the machine and suddenly this emotion would go wash and I'm kind of go, oh. So what I do, there's a technique where you can put yourself in a ball of light. And when you do that, you then don't get the other person's. So I did that first. Yep, it's definitely someone else's. It's not yours. And I could do that. I'd do the testing thing I did with you. You can go around the room saying, whose is this? And then you get, there's this person over there, and this is the way that they're feeling. Oh, that's not nice. So it's a journey from not having any of that to it being, and I can almost appreciate why as a little person I probably cut it off. It can be too overwhelming. If you just walk around picking up everyone's stuff, it's just unpleasant. But many of the cultures teach that emotion, especially boys. Nope. You've got to be brave. You've got to be, crying's for sissies or whatever. There's lots of phrases. Emotional processing is incredibly important, and our dilemma is we're taught not to use that technique. So that can be quite damaging.
So moving from the left brain to the right brain, what exactly did you do in order to get to that point where you could sense other people's emotions to the point where it almost felt like it could have been your own?
That just started happening. So I did a number of workshops. Okay, I've always been incredibly intrigued by consciousness and the nature of what it is. And I made, in one of the earlier ones, this commitment that that's what I wanted to work with. I wanted to work with people on their consciousness. And it was a path. I also did a number of what are called energetic healing modalities. Now, remembering I studied quantum physics when I did engineering. So in quantum physics, I learned that physicality is a joke. It doesn't exist. So if I look at you, what is it? I think something like 19 zeros. You're that much space, and then there's a tiny little atom. So I should be able to see a shimmer. Why we weigh down on a chair is beyond me. Basically, reality is we're mostly space, and actually at the basis of that, we're a sort of a wave particle oscillation. So this is what the ancients called Maya. This physicality is an illusion. It's not the truth. So, but then why not work with the reality? So if you work with the reality, then energetic healing, this should be easy. I remember one of my first sessions with someone online at a distance. They were in the Middle East. And it was someone I was working with who I'd actually studied with. And I was talking about this, doing it at a distance, and I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if this will work for me. And she just said, look, everything's energetic. Of course it works. You're stupid. So I got, okay, maybe, okay. So I then tried it, and it does. So I do the thing at distance. It does, and then you look at entanglement in quantum physics. You brought them together so they kind of know each other. You separate them, and you do something to the one, and the effect appears on the other. So that works. This works at a distance. I can explain it because I can understand the principles of the quantum, and I can appreciate that at that level this works.
Sure.
And then I go, because most of what I do is experiential, then I go and I experience it.
Yeah.
So I actually I try it, I don't know. Let's try it with someone and see what happens. Oh, it worked.
Wow.
So a lot of the work is, here's a bit of discovery. Let's see if that actually, when we try that with someone, if it actually does do something. So
I mean, what you said, so many things now that just resonates and so profound. You spoke about quantum entanglement and how, that sort of transcends time as we know it to be. Now, I've had the privilege of listening to Deepak Chopra and all the rest, and he spoke about something that I also thought was quite profound, and he was alluding to quantum entanglement, and he said that there was this study done where, they actually discovered this boy, he was able to read and to feel and to see his mother's visions, whatever the mother was doing through her own eyes, he could see it. And he asked the boy, and the boy must have been 9 years old or 11 years old, I can't remember exactly. And he asked the boy, he said, what are you doing that you are able to see what your mother is seeing? And he said, quite simply, he said, I love my mother so deeply that I want to see, I want to be. And so he spoke about that love. Now, for us to work with quantum entanglement, what does it require? Because I've tried this. I've tried to connect, let's say, with my mother. I've tried to connect with my father.
Okay. What's this? Do you have someone very dear to you who doesn't live in this country?
I do.
Okay. And this person is, don't have to give me all the name or something, but
I'm quite happy to. So it's it's my best friend.
Okay. Right. And whereabouts?
He's
Europe?
in the UK.
In the UK. Right. Okay. So I want you to, just breathe a little bit. Just center yourself so you're nice and still. And I want you just to literally focus on them. You know what they look like? Just focus on them. Okay. Okay. What do you feel in your body? See, I'm feeling what you're feeling, so now you can't say nothing.
Yeah. There's a sweetness to it. There's a feeling, a radiance. I feel like there's a sun ray, a pleasant sun ray that comes through.
Okay. And there's some emotion in you. If you notice in your eyes at the moment, there's some emotion.
Definitely.
You're actually sensing. Right. Now, do you understand? So practice is a really cool thing. Okay. Practice allows us to notice more. Remembering you're in a male body, so you've probably been taught don't be too emotional. That would be, that would be pathetic or something. So practice it. Just that's what you do. And then you pick up, you're noticing how the other person is.
And that's it.
There's the basis of it. Then have you never had the situation where you think of someone on their phone?
Yeah.
Okay, how did the think of someone arrive in your head?
Well, I would imagine now they'd be discussing it. I would imagine that
they were thinking of calling you.
Yes.
You picked that up because you notice that you're the other end. So if this person that you were talking about, if he happens to phone you today, because he just says, I had this funny sense of that you were around or something.
That's
and
it.
So these things, they exist. And I suppose we're taught generally to, no, that's rubbish. We shouldn't. No, that's true.
Yeah.
So poo all that. Just don't go there. Some people will call you an idiot. We do those things, so we don't believe it. But there it is. It works.
And what about, so I understand the love aspect of it. In order to connect with someone, is it only through love that you connect? What if you hate someone?
Well, you can still connect.
So you can still connect through hate?
You know, you're not connecting. I wouldn't go with. So love is described as the basis. It's like when we leave this form and we go the other side, we experience love. Just that's all there is. This is just underlying, permeating sense of deep love. Okay? So it's kind of like the fabric of things is love. So are we probably connecting through that? Yes. What is hate? It's just your personal emotion. Okay? So if you have a person that you can have a context of hate for.
It's very difficult for me to think of someone, but yeah.
Could be a bully at school. It could be...
I would say dislike. I wouldn't say really hate. But
okay, well, so we're not quite getting to the hate level. We got dislike. Okay? Right, now, what is it about them you dislike?
The way they made me feel. They treated me unkindly.
Right. And so what are you showing yourself? So where does this sense of dislike sit?
I feel it in my body.
Oh, so it's yours, not theirs. What's it showing you?
It's revealing me.
Well, it's showing you that in you, probably in the way Jung spoke, he said in the shadows, that's part of you that you've suppressed. There is this thing called dislike and you judge it. You judge disliking. But actually, you know, to be honest with you, dislike especially, there's a pudding we love and there's a pudding that we just doesn't do it for me. I could dislike that pudding and love that pudding. Dislike's fine. So what Jung's integrated. Yeah, some things I dislike rather than very. So
With you.
Okay. So actually the emotion lies in us. So this, whatever this thing is that we're concerned about, is in us. It's not actually, the other person's just doing something habitually. Remember we said 95% habit, and we don't like that habit. So, you know, why do we find a partner? The partner, they say, is your greatest teacher, because they've got all the habits that will make your red buttons go bing, 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 bing. And some people may have noticed that all happens.
I think a lot of people have noticed that.
But what they're doing is showing you what you can do with, you know, how can I grow? What can I, well, I can resolve this stuff. This is the stuff I can work on and life will become easier.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, Jung spoke about this. The shadow is screaming to get out. So you put me in a box, you put the lid on, you put a padlock on, you welded around the top. And no, I want out of here. And so dreams, these things come out in dreams. They come out in another person has the behavior and you get all, whatever about it, it's all around you. You what's in that box is coming out. So rather just let it come. Honor the partner, because for me this is, I mean, I think in our modern society, what, half of people get divorced or something? Honor the partner for what they're showing you. That's why I suggest the subconscious pick the partner before the conscious did. You know, the subconscious said to the conscious, you can pick that one. And they went, okay, off I go. But why? Because this person's going to press every single button you possess.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's it's a tough pill to swallow though, hey? But
that's the personality pill, not the high, you know, the spirit, no. It says this is all structured so that you have an experience that you learn. So for me, the system, I have an experience, what Buddha said to be human is to suffer. I have an experience of suffering so that I become more wise, so that when I leave this body, I go closer to God. In a broad nutshell. So the work that I do is about that journey of actually getting the energy level to change or bringing in the virtuous energies. So when I leave this body, I go closer to God. And then, like technical parlance, conscious awareness. So we want to increase conscious awareness. And
Flip, I mean, this is amazing. I'm loving this. Okay, so, for someone listening right now, I can almost hear them screaming, okay, Kaylin, I understand now it's the subconscious that I need to tap into. What are the things that we can do? But I'd like to even take it a step further back. What are some of the obstacles that you've noticed that people experience that prevent us from experiencing our Dharma and the purpose that we are made to experience on this earth?
so probably the most dominant is resistance towards things and holding on. One of the things to learn is letting go. And many people, so I mean, in the experience of the work with people, with some people things change dramatically, really quickly. Like this whole life shifts. And with other people, it doesn't. So I've done some work with an associate where we considered that. Why? What is, because this makes, you would choose, I'm showing up here for people to help them make progress on this journey. And sometimes that progress is limited.
Yeah.
And in other cases, it's brilliant. And I find it difficult to kind of discern why. I don't have that key.
Yeah.
So the work was, we basically been shown ways of going more deeply and stimulating a greater shift, so that you kind of get to the people who are, well, they're stuck.
Yeah.
And resistance and holding on.
And why do you think there's this innate desire to hold on, to cling on? Because that's definitely something that I've seen in myself and other people's lives. Where does that stem from?
So I would associate it with control. Why do we control? Why do we need control? Because we think that when we're in control, we can be typically something like survival or safety. I mean, with the subconscious work that, you'll get beliefs that say, if I do this, I'll die. Now, in your subconscious, if I do this, I'll die, your subconscious is going to make sure you don't. Absolutely. There's no way it's going to let you go. Its primary role is to keep you safe. I mean, it gets things wrong and it misinterprets and whatever, but its primary role is to keep you safe. You've got a belief that says, if I do that, I'm horribly unsafe. You'll have an accident, something will go horrendously wrong. There's no way you're going to do that.
With you.
Is that?
Got you. And then what would one do in order to change the narrative, change the subconscious, or at a subconscious level? And I know, that's quite a loaded question, but what could be one of the things that we could do right now in order to tap into that?
Well, I mean, the first thing is just, the first awareness. So the vast majority of people on earth believe they are what I call the personality. And I spoke about the sevenfold constitution, and I spoke about there being 7 aspects, and I really quickly went to the 3 aspects of the Atma, the Buddhi, the Manas, the higher being or the spirit. Okay, and I didn't talk about the lower 4. And the lower 4 make up the personality. The primary level is called the Sthula, and that's, you have one of those, you're quite, you've got that thing clear. Next level is the prana. And, when you look at people who can see energy on bodies, it's a layer on the outside of the physicality. So there's the prana. You also know sometimes you'll have more energy than at other times. So when we get a sickness, when we're emotionally distraught, our energy level tends to drop. And we feel that then in our body, we can't do as much. So there we go, Sthula, prana, then linga, which is the emotional body. Again, interrelate. So with the linga, we get an emotion. It can lower our energy. Emotions tend to also affect us physically. You feel them physically. And then the 4th aspect is called the kama manas, or the monkey mind. And that I ask you the question, is your mind busy? And most people are quite clear, yes, my mind's busy. And then I will say, well, how do you know? Because the system can't observe itself. So the kama manas isn't observing. The kama manas is just doing the thinking. How do you know it's so busy? And then that's the other aspect of you observing. I mean, it's sad that we don't grow up with this awareness that actually there's the truth of who we are, the everlasting being. We're all taught, all the religions,
Yeah.
okay, all teach it. And then there's the body, but we don't get shown or taught what that means in reality. We then live through life as this fourfold personality, which is incredibly reactive. The vast majority of beings on this earth think that's who they are. Sorry, it's just like the bicycle or the car that you own.
Yeah.
It's a temporary thing to get you around. It's very useful, but it's not you. The awareness, the fact that actually you're the spirit observing this process in the body, and the journey is about observing the process, not trying to control it. So let an experience arrive and observe it and learn from it. Don't say, I'm not having that experience, because then that's resistance.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, in other words, flow with it. I love the example of paddling upstream. How much energy does it take to paddle up a rapid?
Yeah.
It's you don't get very far very fast. Okay, and the system wants you to go with the river. Go with the experience, learn from it. Don't keep trying to change it. But the control for safety.
I think that's so profound, and we sort of going through it very quickly, but I think if people can really just listen and take that in, because this is gold. This is absolutely amazing to go with it. It's the stream that's flowing, and you don't want to go against the stream, go with the stream. So just allow it to go. Now, through a couple of years, I've been sort of meditating, and I'm able to observe identify with the observer and looking at things and seeing myself out of myself. I usually describe it as my higher self. I'm not too sure what else
Fine. Good.
to describe it, but that's the way that I feel in my body. However, Mark, I must be honest, like when I observe myself, there's actually a sense of loneliness and isolation, because when I observe myself, I feel like there's an isolation between myself, and there's this complete peace and solitude and stillness, almost to the point where I'm like, okay, now what? Now what?
So we know that the human brain is comparative. That's why we get jealousy and envy, and I look at me and how I am, and that's why we look in the mirror and we think we're ugly, because there's this modern humans, whatever the latest human standard of what people should look like is, and then we judge ourselves against it. So can you understand that the personality is comparative and has a tendency towards separation?
Yeah.
It looks at things as separate. It doesn't look at things right. The reality we discussed earlier, the reality is that everything is, there's one God. We're all like the nerve endings of God. We're all part of the same thing. When we get fully into the sense of the higher being, or we get into that sense of bliss, you get to the Atma, everything it's unifying. So typically the higher being is unifying, and the personality is not unifying. You'll notice human behavior tends to do, look at what's going on in this world at the moment. It's almost like everyone's bombing everyone.
Yeah.
Now we're all actually, if we all knew we were actually all the same organism, would we do that? We would spend a lot more time working stuff out so that everyone had food and everyone could have a home and education and all of those things, if we have that sense of existence. My sense is that the alone thing that you're talking about is actually I'm going to look at it as a belief that says, I am alone. And that you need to pluck out and get the sense, what is it teaching you? So I ask you now, so close your eyes, what is this feeling of being alone? What is the highest truth it's teaching me? What arrives in your awareness?
I feel as if I feel like I've come into this world alone, and I have to do it alone. I feel like that's actually quite a big part of my belief.
Okay.
I have to do it
Right.
alone.
Right. So there you got the belief. I have to do it alone. I want you to ask now, what is the highest truth this is teaching me? Now we're going to the virtue. I want you to go, the answer comes from your spirit.
I mean, almost immediately it was to go beyond that and to integrate everything.
Right. And so integration.
Yeah.
Okay. So then so in the work, you said give you practical examples where I would stimulate the virtue of, so I'd use, this is the theta then, we now use the theta. We'd stimulate the virtue of integration, comes down into you, and then the virtue of integration displaces the sense of aloneness. But it also, for me, can I be honest, what are you doing with this podcast?
Well, the goal is to
What did your hands just do? Do that again. What's that?
connect.
Is that alone?
No, absolutely
What is your
not.
purpose? Do you understand what you're fulfilling?
Yes.
You're fulfilling bringing people together, not separating. Now, there's enough people on this planet separating at the present moment that having someone who is doing that,
I'm already doing it.
you're already doing it.
I'm already doing it. Sure. Absolutely. And where my mind goes now is, okay, but why did I always have this? Is it because I was so identified by my personality, which tends to separate, that I haven't really seen? So that experience of me observing myself, do you feel like that was me still being identified with
There's some aspect of the personality that's still coming
that I haven't really?
Yeah. Or you're identifying the fact, actually, you're realizing the fact you need to release this. Okay. So the discernment, and that again comes with practice. Sitting there, and so you've got that, okay, actually that's something that's still going on that isn't serving me. And now I observe what I'm actually doing in life, and I'm actually connecting people. Okay?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like the nice, the beautiful would be community. So you're there you go. Yeah, can you feel the emotion you just got? So there you go. That word is the right word. So then with your permission, we stimulate the virtue of community comes into your being. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we bring it into your being. So now if we body tested you, you would test, I'm a master of the virtue of community. And actually you're already, but you now understand, for me, it kind of gives you a deeper sense of what you're showing up in the world to do and how you make such a big difference.
I mean, this is quite amazing, hey? Because, what this has done is immediately it exposed, because I wouldn't have articulated, I wouldn't have said it out loud that I do have this limiting belief of being isolated. That wasn't something that was brought up to my full consciousness as yet. And so having this conversation has brought it up, number one. Number two, you've then pointed it to a higher virtue. And by pointing it to a higher virtue of connectedness, for me, it almost makes me wonder, I have now this clarity. You spoke about that RAS system, the reticulated activating system, how that, like, all my mind just wants to go to connection and connectivity. And so what you've done is you've literally linked the 2 points together. So now I'm so much more, have a lot more clarity as to what needs to be done and where I'm moving toward and not avoiding. Because I think I was avoiding, that was the energy of avoidance, versus now I feel like I'm now moving toward, which is such a different way of feeling in and of itself. I mean, okay, well.
I add to it, like if you look, and we look at the ancients, and so in philosophically they describe that it is through the practice of virtues, through the personality practicing virtues, that the link between the personality and the higher being opens, and the virtue you're heading towards is the virtue of wholeness, where that operates as a single entity and your spirit shines through you in this world, in this life. Okay? That's where we ask, where are we headed and what are we doing? What did the ancients do? So let's say the one we've just got now is community. I'm going through life, I'm walking, I see a situation by the side of the road, and I ask myself the question, what would community do? And community would say, there's some children here who are like stuck in the middle of the road. Then they've got no food, they've got no water. We would get them all together. We would get them food and water. We would make the situation there better. Okay. And as you go through life, you keep doing this. Now, we spoke about the habituated nature of the personality. So it inherits all this stuff. You learn a huge amount when you're very young. And what we're then going to do is we're going to habituate this new practice of community. We're going to do it all day, every day. Everything we come across, what would community do? What's the thing with the mantra? They say 30 days or something. You just keep doing this. Eventually it ingrains. You walk around, you are community. As you walk around, you are habituated. I create community in every step I take, everywhere I go.
Sure.
Okay.
And I think I love this. It's a beautiful segue to affirmations, and because there's a lot of that out there, and a lot of people say, practice your positive affirmations and so forth. I feel like it's lost its essence of why we do what we do. For someone listening who wants to start to change that the subconscious level, what exactly does positive affirmations do energetically? Because is it just as simple as for 30 days, just say, I'm loved, or in my case, I'm community, I'm creating community, I'm creating community. Is it as simple as that?
Well, I would suggest, so here's a perspective. And so when you speak to people, and my first exposure to working on the subconscious was with affirmations. And people would say, look, it might work, it might not. Now, I think I mentioned that when I did the theta work originally, you have beliefs. And your theta is a modality which you can use to stimulate a change in a belief. What's taught is if there is a lesson associated with the belief, remember the lessons come in your divine timing, what am I here to learn? Then the belief won't change or it won't stay changed. We need to do the lesson. Affirmations don't touch that. Affirmations only touch the belief. So I think in many cases, I'm working at it, it just gets put straight back in. Some of the later work I pointed at about let's now make this more sophisticated so that it has more effect. Because, there's a lot of people where it doesn't shift. We now want more people to shift. Actually works on taking away the energy source that keeps putting it back in. So you want the thing out. We don't want it maybe out. So there's a dilemma for me. That's a perspective. That's a dilemma I have with affirmations.
Yeah. Which I agree, yeah.
Okay. When you are practicing a virtuous behavior, what we're doing is we want you to habituate it. You actually literally become it because you just do it everywhere you go, every circumstance you come across, that's how you show up. And it just literally becomes, it's like driving the car. After a while, you just change the gears without even thinking. So you do community without even thinking.
Yes.
If that makes sense. So to kind of, I guess for me then, in the learning in my journey, the reason that the theta appealed to me so much was that it was a much more effective way of stimulating a change in beliefs. So I actually went to psychologists who use affirmations to, let's get something to change in your life. And 30 days for each one. And I'm kind of going, guys, this is life's not long enough. So, whereas theta's was like a couple of minutes and you shift it. So, yeah, for me, that was really appealing.
Yeah.
So then it's when I started using it more. And there are other modalities. I've looked at a number of them and I've still stuck with theta. But it's like, I would suggest that what we stimulate in a session is a particular shift in your psyche, okay? I happen to use a modality that I call theta to do it. There are other modalities to do it. The actual point is the essence of what's being done, the energetic change. The modality we use is almost secondary. Is
with you.
The essence is shift what lies in the structure so that you can move forward in life with more ease.
So for people to really get a better understanding as to what exactly we did right now, you asked for my permission and then you did something.
Yes.
And I actually felt something.
Okay.
It was the warmth. What just so people can understand, what exactly did you do
So
there?
I basically used the theta modality as I was trained. So in doing that, what I do is I have a practice or a process to go up into theta. Now, because I've been doing it for so long, I can go rather fast. I can actually typically switch into it.
And theta as in the theta frequency?
Yeah, brain state. So the theta, that's where the name comes from. Beta as adults, 13, 20 hertz, sometimes up to 25. Theta around about 6. So the brain's a hell of a lot slower. You go through it twice a day as you wake up and as you go to sleep. Now, I didn't realize this, but a lot of the clever dudes of the past, apparently Jung did this. What they would do is they had something that they would hold above like a plate. And the moment they fell asleep, they drop it and it would go clank. But then they were in that state between sleep and awareness. So that's the way that they got into theta, was to keep just something that wouldn't let them quite ever go to sleep so they could stay in the state just before it. But it is that state. So into sleep, out of sleep, your brain goes through it. So it's that state, and then in that state, there's a structure of how you stimulate things to change. But there's loads. I mean, for people who are interested, there are loads of teachers in South Africa. There's loads in Johannesburg. It's a really cool modality to learn, even if you're just going to use it on yourself. It gives you a huge amount of awareness. Just the introductory courses are really good for that. It teaches you all sorts of things that help you understand life better.
And so, just so people also understand, what's the profoundness of getting into a theta state? Why would Jung want to go into a theta state? Albert Einstein.
I think I'm presuming it's a connection into intuition. The connection into the intuition just goes pum. And also in that state, so the principle is this: I'm going there, you're following. So remember the thing about you had an emotion, a response, I felt it in my body. Because that's called being empathic, and it just happens. Many humans are like it. The same thing's going to happen with the brain state. So typically, when I do a session with someone at my office, that I say, rest your hand on my hand. And you take them into theta. You want them in theta so that the stuff also changes more readily in them.
And is there ever a time where you actually just couldn't create a change in someone because they were just completely blocked off, or whatever the case is? And is the word blocked? I'm not too sure how to describe someone who cannot get into that. But yeah, has there ever a time where you just couldn't get into that or allow them to get into that state? And why?
I had one session once, but where nothing worked. Nothing, zero.
And what would you say? Why was that?
Well, it was a good learning experience for me.
And what did you learn from that?
Well, no. So from where it's keeping coming to me as part of my journey is humility. I mean, this is through me, not of me, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay, so is this humility of lots of my life history is about humility. You keep the humility, son.
Yeah. And so, a lot of the followers that I have a lot of physical pain.
Yes.
Knee pain, hip pain, back pain, shoulder pain, chronic conditions, autoimmune diseases. What can they take away from this conversation today? So how can they start to implement this to start? Firstly, I'd love for you to speak about the connection between your subconscious and the physical manifestation of the body.
So, Kaelan, there are many books, and I mean many books, that describe the link between thinking patterns, belief structures, and physicality. So the first and probably historically the most famous is a book by Louise Hay. And Louise Hay described, here's a physical condition, here's the mantra to release it. So what she's doing with the mantra is releasing the belief structure, which is the negative one that stimulates. So I've said to you, Maya, I've said to you that physicality is an illusion and that underneath it it's all energetic. So part of what lies under physicality is the metaphysical. And this structure of, here's the belief structure that induces the following physicality, is in the metaphysical. And before we started, we spoke about theta, and I was saying that as a modality, I'm just using it as a modality. It's not what we're doing, it's just a useful way of doing something. And it's split into two key parts. And one of the parts is working on the beliefs, the structures in the brain. And the other part is pure energetic healing, which I don't tend to use very much. There are other healers who really, that's where they focus. Now, for me, the thought structure pre-exists the physicality. And the way I would describe it, the way I do describe it to people, is that when we're very young, so here's a structure in the brain, or that we've maybe inherited it 20 generations, and we're getting signs around us that we're clearly not listening to, we're resisting. So, okay, you're not listening. What should we do next? Okay. So the first thing is I'll slap you on the side of her face with a minnow. Let's get you to see if you can notice this. And then you move on in life a bit. And I don't know if you notice, but as people get older, the physical slap gets harder.
Yeah.
So I describe it, when you reach my age, you get hit by a blue whale down the street. Okay, there's no more minnows. You get, if you get sick, you get it. It's proper. Okay?
That's so interesting. Yes.
Okay, so you're being advised to do something about it, but you can work on it. Don't get me wrong. Working on it in the physical does do something. It does start working on it. But why not work on it from both sides?
Yeah.
There you go. So if you give me one, so I'll look it up. You give me one part of the physicality that you see commonly as a.
So let's look at, I'd like to do two if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's do number one. A lot of people experience lower back pain.
Okie dokie.
And then the other one we'll do fibromyalgia. But let's start with lower back pain. A lot of people suffer with lower back pain.
So I'll read it to you. This book is called The Secret Language of Your Body.
Okay.
So I have it. I take most of my reference books. I put them in Kindle. I have them on my phone, so I don't have to carry a bookcase with me. So I'm going to read to you the lower back. Okay. And just from experience, so what I would do with people when there's a physical ailment is I will go through the list and check. So usually you don't get the whole list. You get items on the list.
Okay.
I think the whole lot might be quite sore. So feeling insecure about how you will support yourself financially. And I think in our current times, we can appreciate that that is a very common dilemma.
Definitely.
Constant worry about your survival and how you're going to pay the bills. Holding on to unresolved anger from childhood. Feeling like a victim. Victimhood is very, very common, especially in people are less aware. Struggling, suffering, controlling. Remembering what Buddha said, to be human, his first great revelation, to be human is to suffer. So there we go. Everyone should have lower back pain. Focus on limitations and negativity and why you can't do things instead of how you can.
Wow.
Okay, so that's that book on, and I think I've got about 5 or 6 books. So sometimes I've got this big golden book, which you can't get digitally, which I just have in my office. And there's the Louise Hay book, which is probably the most common. It's also quite useful. So the next one you wanted was fibromyalgia. Right, fibromyalgia, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Feeling unwanted, knocked down by life's challenges, overstressed, lacking the strength to get up and keep going, too much to do and not enough time and energy to do it. Life feels like a fight. Feeling stuck, resistance to growth, movement and exploration. Overflowing with sadness, regret, guilt and worry. Feeling depressed, suppressed and on guard.
I mean, I can definitely see that. There's people that's popping up in my mind as you're saying these things. I'm like, check.
Right. How did that work? How did your system reference, going through this, the link to the people?
That's the energy.
Well, and also you're starting to use, you're using the other aspect. As more and more, as you open it up, the information just comes freely. So the Buddhists, the old Buddhists, that again, this comes from the philosophy stuff, describe the kama manas, the thinking mind, as a nuisance. It's just a nuisance. They describe the buddhi, or the intuition, as the highest form of intelligence. So in other words, you just allow the answer to arrive. You don't need to know everything. It's pointless. So it's like you're working with someone and you allow what you just did to occur. You'll immediately know what the actual relevant part is.
That's one of, I'm not gonna lie, that's been one of my biggest fears is, working with someone and I can feel it. And this happened yesterday, in fact, or the day before. And I felt it and I knew exactly what I needed to say, but I was afraid because I was thinking, like, I work with the body. I'm not supposed to be delving into the psychological limiting belief structures and blah blah blah, but I do feel that's what separates me as a practitioner. I feel like I am quite intuitive in many ways like that, and so I would say it, but then I would disregard the profoundness. I'll say, and this is exactly what I said. I said, I feel like you need to express yourself more. There's something you feel very, you bind in yourself, you feel unsupported, you don't feel loved. I said that. And she has lower back pain. And so I said, but I still want you to go for x-rays, blah, 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 even though I know intuitively there's something more, and I feel as if I understand it intellectually, but experientially, I haven't really felt it completely just yet in terms of by changing the structure of the mind, will that then manifest in the body? Would you then say, like, all of our ailments is 100% based on our limiting beliefs, our subconscious beliefs?
I am going to suggest, and this comes from the lips of someone who I've worked with before, who I have a great deal of trust for. Our experience, the Maya, the experience, is 100% the product of our belief structure. Okay. So when we look at that belief structure, and I just don't know it. I don't know. I mean, I am aware that there are certain beings who can float, who can overcome gravity. Now, I can't overcome gravity. I know that very clearly. But when you can get to some of the really core stuff and work with it, this structure is just, it's like a very, very, very sophisticated video game.
Yeah.
It's got more senses than the video game has. It's got more, and there's all the rules. But the thing is, we can change the rules. So I mean, it's like on a video game. If you had the ultimate cheat code,
yes.
It's like that,
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of that is possible, but I do have an appreciation that there is a reality. Now, that reality is that structure is quite complex, and this goes to the engineering thing. I started as an engineer. I'm incredibly systemic. This stuff I see systemically. So the structure of it, the beliefs, the lessons, how the virtues work, how some of the other structures work, it's very systemic for me. It is really helpful to not just work on the one, because the other one, it's like they reinforce. You're aware of TRE? Trauma release exercise.
Yes.
Okay? Right. So TRE works on the physical. That's what it does. We observe that when a dog is stressed, it then shakes to release the stress. And it's kind of the invocation of that as a human practice to let people release things like PTSD. So what we're doing is taking a trauma structure within the person somewhere, and all of the structure goes with it. And we're using a practice like physical practice to let it go. And physicality, you can do amazing things with. I mean, I think that if we said that we couldn't with physicality release stuff, we would have a limiting belief. I look at yoga and how in yoga, people in certain poses release emotion.
I mean,
it works. It's like that, so it works both ways. So when you've got it, you can tell me how you did it.
I was about to just say to you, but is it truly if you're only working with the physical, can you release emotion? I understand like the trauma release therapy and how, you know, the shake and releases that. In my mind, I thought, okay, but then hang on, where does the limiting, how do you then rectify the limiting belief that causes that trauma? You know, but like you say now, that is actually a limiting belief for me to assume that by only working on the body and not working on the structure itself of the mind, the belief. That's my own limiting belief.
Some of the practices, I said to you, I use theta, but there's other ones. One of them uses literally, so you use a technique, a body testing technique to test what is the, and it's like a list of traumas. It's not my kind of approach, is rather free form. There's a list, you're looking for stuff that happens to be on a list. They release it by a hand movement up the spine over the top of the head. So basically you're moving your hand through the energy field. And that releases the belief. So I know that in my experience with theta, I have become much, much more proficient with time. So what I do has much more impact. So it's a little bit like you're ingraining the thing to make it more effective. So once you've ingrained the fact that this movement drops the belief, so why don't you have a movement? So when you determine there's the physicality, I'm sensing the belief. When I do this physically, the belief is released. So in other words, if you say that that's going to, why shouldn't it happen?
Wow.
You see how we limit us. I mean, you can see how the structure we live in, our cultures, what we're taught, how all of these things limit us. We started by saying that our culture tends to limit our experience of emotion, and the experience of emotion is really important. So, but it goes much more broadly. It has all sorts of other implications.
I mean, that just opens up a completely, it feels like you have this rebirth in a sense, because now it's like, okay, all the things that I thought is actually no more, if not way more. And so what would you say for someone sitting right here, listening to us, and I'm hoping people are really getting this because this is so profound. If they could do one thing that will point them in the right direction in getting to understand their higher self, to tap into this godlike quality that we all are already, what can they do right now?
Grounding. That's physical practice.
Yes.
So outside on the grass barefoot, and literally go through a process of asking a series of questions. I'm there, my feet, and we know, there's books around what happens ionically at the interchange between the foot and the ground, how really good it is for us. It allows stuff to move out of us. So we ask, and I hope so I get this right. So we ask the question, where am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And where do I want to be? And just go through that process and just focus a little bit on your feet, on your hands, top of your head, on your heart, and then just, I'm the connection between source and this earth. Just literally, let's start reinforcing an appreciation and understanding, yes, I'm in a physicality on this earth, but I'm also actually connected upstairs. And we're doing it, and do that more than once a day.
And even if you don't believe that as yet, the fact that you feel like you mentioned the fact that you are connected, not just down below, but upstairs,
yes,
the high dimensions. Even if you don't believe it, well, that's still...
Well, how about we start doing some things where we say, okay, now you have to prove to me it exists because I don't think you're real upstairs. So things start happening synchronistically. Just, show me.
Show me.
Yeah. I had one this morning, okay, and this is so for me, I choose to be as observant as I can. I'm not saying I'm brilliant at it. And this one, this one actually got me. I'm working with an individual that's online, and the screen, my computer screen goes completely black. And I've got a screen, and the PC's tucked in there. I've got this big screen. this is a bit irritating. You know, what's going wrong? Because
Yeah.
one of my pieces of equipment is failing again. So I made the screen, the Skype, whatever, no, Teams screen a bit smaller, and I carry on. Happens again. Next time it's not the Teams screen, it's the whole screen. Okay, so it happened 5 times. I said, okay, I'm sorry. I have to check this. So I go to my little book. I look up metaphysical. What is this thing? And it relates to faith. So when you look at the metaphysical meaning of things, so here's a phenomenon I've experienced in the outside world, which is Maya. What does it mean? Metaphysical meaning of. And it related to faith. What's the primary lesson for this individual on this day? Relates to faith. So you get shown, you know, with me, the universe is there to show you stuff. You need to be observant and just allow it to occur. And can I be honest? There will be some people who will listen to today and the point that you've said, guys, look, consider this. And they will say, wow, that's a good point, and I'm going to, and it will make a massive difference for them. And there'll be some who say, no, this is whatever the word is, rubbish or something like that. And they won't. Okay? But I remember, what was his name? The guy that did the thing with the starfish. And he went down the beach and he picked up a starfish that was on the sand and he threw it back into the water. And the beach was covered in starfish. And the guy says, why did you do that? What's the point? He says, okay, mate, you know, what difference does it make? No difference at all for the starfish on the beach. For that one starfish, that was a monster difference. So for the person that takes what you said and starts observing and starts noticing, and it's like, for many people think I'm the personality. When I die, I'm gone. Well, okay, you've got some ancestors. There must be someone you loved.
Yeah.
Ask them to stimulate something that you might go. I mean, many things, songs, stopping clocks, birds, all sorts of feathers. And then when you say, no, rubbish, it's just one feather. And then all of a sudden you go into a lounge and it's covered in feathers and you know. So there is for me, it's not I believe in, it's that I know. Does that make sense? That the other side exists, that it is, that's the reality. This is the temporary home. Just if you go with it and you start allowing it, you'll be amazed what can come through. And just the other thing is, I remember this is something we were taught there's a place called the Insight Training Center, which is where I had the emotion experience. And I think it's reopened. And one of the things that they taught was the human operating system. And we get taught, do so that you can have, and then you'll be. Okay? So I've got to be busy, I've got to study, If I study, I'll have a biokinetics degree, and then I'll have a happy life, a successful whatever, I'll be recognized in my society, all those things. The reality of, this is another one that people may not know. The reality is be, do, have. So I'm a human being. That's what we're called for a reason. I'm a human being, I do something that is consistent with the being. Okay? So in other words, we noticed earlier that your being is related in some way to unity and oneness. That's one of the things you stimulate. I do an action that is consistent with that, which is your podcast, is consistent with that. Okay? And then that creates have. We don't worry, we tend to worry about have, right? Let have occur because I'm consistent with my being. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and it's just occurring. And he taught us this. He said, look, do. If the do doesn't work, okay, you're only doing little do's, just change it, do another do. And he described it as the human operating system is 90% intention, 10% action. So you sit in the morning, I'm going to create community in my life, and then during the day sometime, do something that does something like that. That's the human operating system. And then things start to open up. You know how we live. We do the do live. That's what we get taught when we're young. That's how we exist. How well is it working?
Yeah.
For many, many people, I mean, the ones you see, for lots of people, they're really struggling with this. And we use the word try. That was one of the things I was shown on some of the first theta work, was the energy of the word try is 0. So when I say try, I'm going to try, it means, no, I'm not doing nothing. I'm quite happy where I am. Rather set an intention. So my intention is, I intend to create greater and greater community on this earth. There's your intention, and here's the action. And then you end up with a podcast with 10 million followers. Do you get it? Absolutely. And now within you, you've got that energy of, you had that sense of this being at one with the creation of the community. You now appreciate, you know, it's like a feeling. It's a tangible thing. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And I think that's exactly, you know, what I've always known, that there's a feeling that comes from, you know, being connected, you know, whether it is having the right intention. And that word try, I 100% agree. You know, I would say it and immediately I feel like there's a cutoff, there's a separation.
Yeah.
And so that intention is so important. I'm going to be quite honest with you and frank and say, recently we discussed it off camera that I wanted to open up a new practice. And initially, when I would think of it, there was this complete block. I couldn't visualize the new practice because of my own limiting beliefs. And I then recognized that. And then I started visualizing it, and in a way that sort of mustered up those feelings of, in all honesty, now that I imagine it, the word that came to my mind was discipleship, which is sort of a sense of community.
Yeah.
And when I was when I was imagining it the previous time, I didn't include this feeling of discipleship. And then I sort of went back to why I need to do what I need to do, which I felt was a gift given to me. I recognized that it wasn't my own action, it was given to me. And now that I've included this community, the sense of community discipleship, now I can visualize the new practice and I see it in its beauty. And now as a natural response, I now am able to take action, and the have, I would imagine, would come later as a natural consequence. And so, you know, I think this is so profound. It's, you have to first be. Now, in order to be, what does that look like for someone?
Breath. Focus on your breath. So when we take, I mean, breath's a beautiful thing. I actually saw something about it recently. So very much, most of our physicality is autonomic. Okay? It's like even movement. There's an intention to run to the other side of the room. You definitively don't control all the muscles. Breath is controlled by the autonomic system, but you can also override it. And you can use breath to become present. So part of Maya is that, you know, it's this illusion of time, space. So to have space, to have a physical experience, we need time. Because there is time between, for me to get to there's time, okay? Time doesn't truly, I mean, people won't get this, but time doesn't truly exist. Well, that's entanglement. So the truth is entanglement. Okay, that's not time. Okay, there's no time there, but the experience we have has it within it. So by breathing, and I remember I said this is the one system you can interfere with, you can basically bring yourself into the present moment. So one of the things, there's a technique called Vipassana, which comes from, it's an Eastern process. It's very, very old. I think it comes initially from Hindu tradition. And it's a 10-day process of silence, very limited food, where you meditate for 10 days. And the first, most people are going to look at that and say, that's not a holiday. And most people to do it say, that's not a holiday. But I think it's like the first 4 days, the practice is to focus here on your upper lip, the breath going across the upper lip.
Wow.
So you start focusing not on, what do we focus on? The outside world, almost exclusively. We want to focus on this thing so that we're much, much, much more in tune with it and how it senses and all of those things. So we just focus on the upper lip. So as we breathe, so we focus on the breath. And as we breathe, we just focus on the upper lip. And that brings you into the present moment every single time. And it's incredibly peaceful. So there's loads of stuff written about the box breath. And there's arguments about which one is the best. But realistically, if you breathe in through your nose, just slowly, hold it. Breathe out through your mouth. Hold it. Breathe in through your nose. You brought all your focused awareness, all of your concentration onto the breath. And it centers you. You're in the present moment. So when you're feeling discombobulated, you're a bit, too much is going on, whatever.
I think that's the ultimate, or one of the bigger truths is, we live in such a world where there's so much hustle and bustle and grind, and we fail to bring ourselves back to ground ourselves, to come down to this state of this parasympathetic state of relaxation and digestion. And I think that's what theta is. It's allowing yourself, lowering yourself enough so that you can then be intuitive enough, so you can get these downloads, that you can get these ideas, that you can begin to sense people, you can begin to heal yourself, that seems to be the gateway for all of the things that we desire, but not realizing that we are it, or can be it, if we just begin to bring ourselves down, nervous system wise, but also just energetically wise. Would you say, is that in a nutshell what we're trying to do, is down-regulate the nervous system enough, get yourself in a state of that parasympathetic state, theta state, that then allows you to be in tune with everything? Is it as simple as that?
So the 3 virtues associated with the journey to wholeness, which is the integration of the personality with the high being, purification, transformation, and transmutation. When one of the books written about this link into the high being was by a lady called Blavatsky, and her book is called The Voice of Silence. Now, you will have noticed that our personality is very noisy. Emotions, thoughts, physicality, pains, it's really, really noisy. When it is really noisy, we don't hear the voice from above. You only hear it when you can get really quiet. So purification is to get the physicality and the emotional system and the thought system to calm right down. So it's quiet enough to do the next work. So the next work I would suggest, so the transformation says, let's take all of this historic programming that lots of it you've kind of taken from your ancestors, and we need to clean it up, because it currently stimulates suffering, it stimulates victimhood, it stimulates jealousy, all of the lower emotions which keep us vibrating lower. And then when what you're doing is you're fixing up the whole system, and it includes all 4 aspects of it: physicality, energy, emotion, and the mind. That for me is the core journey. The core journey is the journey to becoming whole. I spoke to you about how the ancient Greeks would practice virtues. For them, they appreciated the sevenfold constitution. They in fact had other schemas which are very similar for it. And they wouldn't let someone into the Senate, the guys that ran the society, unless they had practiced these things for many years and they were whole. So when you're whole, you think from there, not there. So you don't think comparative, you think unifying. You think, what can I do for society? Not what can I put in my couch, to use a little.
Yeah.
So they had a way of making sure that the people looked after their society were the people that would care for all of them, and not the ones that were just. I mean, I look at Trump at the moment, and I've learned to be less. I'm not emotionally connected to this, but I mean, the crypto business, the cell phone business, gold cell phones, the selling visas for $5 million, this chap's special. And my observation is he's definitively not. His spirit is not shining through him. Is that so? Your spirit, beautiful. Unifying, bringing community, building community. Whatever his spirit has to say, it's been told to shut up.
Yes, I think that's such a nice way to look at it. If you are doing anything that tends to separate, you're not allowing the spirit to move through you. And if you tend to move towards things that is inclusive, unification, then you are, for the most part, allowing that spirit to move through you.
You are in alignment with it.
You are in alignment with it. Mark, this has been, for me personally, it's been, quite a beautiful conversation, because it reminds me of the things that, I have been doing, the things that I should include more of, and so forth. And I'm sure many people will be blessed by it. Is there anything, just to tie it all together, is there anything that you would like to share with me, with everyone, just anything that you feel in your spirit that needs to be shared right now in today's age?
So this goes to one of the experiences at one of the workshops, and the experience was, for the sake of words, was the experience of your I am, which is the nature of that part of you, the spirit. And so my I am is compassion. So that's what I would choose to embody for others, is to in this world, as you look around you, have compassion for others. We make some, assumption is a dreadful thing. It's like when people at the haves look at the have-nots and say, why don't they just get a job? For me, when you are trapped in the poverty trap, it is incredibly difficult to escape. So even belief structures, I'm a pauper, I'm poor, I lose everything, they will keep you there for generations. So typically, someone that can escape that it's a monster journey. And have compassion for people who don't have the blessings and the things that you do. So that would be mine.
I love that. And then to end it off, I would love for you to share, if you're willing, to share a story, a story that you've thought was quite profound, a personal story, just to highlight all that we spoke about today. Something that really just touched you, that you could, assign to the spirit, being connected to God, whatever it is. Is there any story that you would like to share, just to show what the potential could be for people who are on this journey?
I'm not getting a specific example. I would use the example, many people live in a state of turmoil, and the example of the monkey mind being rampant is okay. And I would often use with people the metaphor of flying fish. So literally, if thought with a flying fish, when they look at the ocean, all they see is fish. And when I was younger, I saw fish. Many fish. And through this journey, and it's a journey of practices and workshops. It's not a journey, this is not really impossible, or no. This is, I'm not a master. I now see a flying fish. And then I'll see another flying fish. And then I'll see, so I just have inner peace. And I just, to appreciate the fact that it's justice. I can't remember the words that are recorded in the Bible that Jesus said, but he spoke about the fact that this state was available to all. This wasn't only the state of him. Is that this is it's available. Turn your focus on the outside, turn it to the inside, and it's available. Because I mean, the difference between, I mean, I can't even remember the level of anxiety that these thoughts could stimulate almost incessantly, and now I just don't have any. So there you go, it's possible.